My dad's new girlfriend deliberately fed me peanut butter, despite knowing about my severe allergy and nearly unalived me. When Dad kicked her out, she faked a pregnancy and sued us for everything we had, so we let her destroy herself with her darkest secrets. She didn't know we knew. My dad's the type of person to carry bread in his pocket on the way to work, just to feed the pigeons. Growing up, he'd wake up at 5 a.m. just to make my school lunches from scratch because he read that cafeteria food wasn't nutritious enough. Once, when I got diagnosed with a severe peanut allergy at age 8, he spent weeks researching every single ingredient in our pantry and donated anything unsafe to ensure our house was 100% peanut-free. After being single for nearly a decade, he finally met Sarah through his hiking club when I turned 17. I'd never seen him smile so much. He was literally humming while doing dishes and buying new shirts for their dates. She seemed genuinely sweet, always asking about my college plans and bringing him his favorite coffee. Our first family dinner was at this Italian place downtown. Everything was going perfectly until dessert arrived. She'd ordered something with Nutella. "Oh gosh, I completely forgot about your allergy," she gasped, pushing the plate away. Dad just smiled and said these things happen. I figured it was an honest mistake. But then our kitchen started filling up with danger. Protein bars with peanuts, trail mix, pad thai leftovers. Each time she'd slap her forehead and apologize profusely. Dad would patiently remind her while reorganizing the pantry. "Sarah's just not used to thinking about allergies yet," he'd tell me. 3 months later, on a Saturday afternoon, Dad was outside fixing the fence. Sarah bounced into the kitchen where I was studying. "I made too much of my special protein smoothie. Do you want some?" Before I could check the ingredients, she'd poured me a glass. "Drink up. You look tired." The first sip hit different. That distinctive nutty taste sent panic through my body. "Did you put peanut butter in this?" "Just a spoonful. You teens are always being overdramatic about allergies. A tiny bit helps build immunity," she said, waving her hand dismissively. My tongue was already swelling. The room started spinning. I tried to scream, but my airway was closing. I crashed to the floor, knocking over my textbooks. The back door slammed open. Dad appeared like he'd teleported, already pulling the EpiPen from the drawer. He jammed it into my thigh while his other hand dialed 911. Through my fading vision, I saw him turn to Sarah with a look I'd never seen before. Pure rage. At the hospital, once the doctors confirmed I was stable, Dad stayed glued to my bedside. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "She won't come near you again," he said quietly. "I've already called a locksmith, filed a report with the police. She's done." He squeezed my hand and pulled out his phone to show me something. A text from Sarah, sent an hour ago. "Just found out I'm 8 weeks along. Can we please talk about this like adults?" The heart monitor started beeping faster. Dad immediately called the nurse, but I couldn't stop staring at those words. The nurse rushed in, checking my vitals while Dad gripped my hand tighter. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. He deleted it without reading. "She's lying," I croaked through my raw throat. "About the pregnancy." Dad's eyes hardened. "Doesn't matter if she is or isn't. She's out of our lives." The doctor entered with discharge papers, explaining I'd need to stay for observation given the severity of my reaction. 2 full days, minimum. Dad nodded, already pulling out his laptop to email his boss about taking time off. That first night in the hospital, Dad slept in the chair beside my bed. Every time a nurse came in, he'd jolt awake, immediately checking that they verified my allergy band. His phone lit up constantly with calls and texts. Sarah's name flashed over and over until he finally blocked her number. By morning, she'd switched tactics. The hospital reception called our room saying someone claiming to be my mother was demanding information. Dad's face went dark as he informed them my mother had been dead for 12 years and to call security if anyone else asked. The second day brought escalation. Dad stepped out to grab coffee and returned with his jaw clenched. She was in the parking lot. Security escorted her off the property. He showed me his phone. 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. Each voicemail the same theme. I was a jealous brat trying to destroy their family. She'd made one tiny mistake. The baby deserved a father. "Change your number," I urged. He was already dialing the phone company. The discharge process took hours. Dad insisted on speaking to every staff member about security protocols, verifying that Sarah couldn't access my medical records. He'd brought a change of clothes for me from home and helped me dress when my hands shook too much to manage buttons. The ride home felt surreal. Our quiet street looked the same, but Dad kept checking the mirrors. He'd already changed the locks. The new keys felt heavy in my hand. Inside, the kitchen had been stripped of anything containing nuts. Even items that might have been processed in facilities with peanuts were gone. "I donated everything to the food bank," Dad explained, helping me to the couch. Fresh start. His new phone buzzed. A number he recognized, his hiking club leader. Dad's face fell as he listened. "No, that's not. She tried to unalive." "I understand." He hung up looking defeated. "She's been calling club members, telling them I abandoned her after finding out about the baby." I watched him sink into his chair, suddenly looking older. This man who'd woken up at dawn for years just to make my lunches, who'd researched every ingredient to keep me safe, was now being painted as a villain. "We need a lawyer," I said. He was already Googling. "Way ahead of you." The next morning, a thick envelope appeared under our door. No postage, hand-delivered. Dad opened it wearing gloves he'd grabbed from under the sink. Inside were printed articles about stepchildren who'd unalived newborn siblings out of jealousy. A sticky note on top in Sarah's handwriting. "This is what you're creating." Dad photographed everything, then sealed it in a plastic bag. "Evidence," he muttered. I returned to school 3 days later to find chaos. The attendance office secretary pulled me aside immediately. "We've had multiple calls from someone claiming to be your father, demanding your schedule and grades. The voice didn't sound right, so we didn't release anything." My stomach dropped. Dad had to leave work to come verify his identity in person. The school implemented a new policy that day. Password verification for any calls about me. Dad chose the word pigeon with a grim smile. 2 weeks into the harassment, Dad's phone rang at dinner. He didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. anyway. I watched his face cycle through confusion, then understanding. That was Sarah's sister, he said after hanging up. She wanted me to know Sarah's staying with her. Says Sarah won't accept the breakup. Keeps insisting the peanut thing was an accident. She sounds concerned. Did you tell her about the articles? The calls? I documented it. Didn't engage. He pushed his food around his plate. She mentioned Sarah's done this before. The pregnancy claims after breakups. My fork clattered to the table. What? Her sister didn't elaborate, just said to be careful. 3 weeks after the incident, we were served papers. Sarah had filed a civil suit claiming Dad owed her money for moving expenses and emotional distress from the relationship. The amount she demanded made Dad's hands shake. This is insane, I said, reading over his shoulder. This is expensive, he corrected, already dialing the lawyer he'd researched. The retainer alone cost $3,000. I saw Dad wince as he wrote the check, but he didn't hesitate. The lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, reviewed everything we'd documented. The good news is her claims are baseless, Patricia said. The bad news is you still have to defend against them. I noticed things changing at home. Dad installed a camera by the front door, then another by the back. Our mail started arriving, opened and resealed. He'd gotten a P.O. box and was screening everything first. My social media accounts kept showing login attempts from our town. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. She's posting about the pregnancy, Dad said one evening, showing me his laptop. He'd created a fake account to monitor her public posts. Sarah had already found a new boyfriend who was excitedly posting about becoming a father. Poor guy has no idea. The civil suit dragged on for months. Every meeting with Patricia meant another check. Dad started picking up overtime shifts, coming home exhausted but never complaining. I offered to get a part-time job, but he refused. Focus on school, on getting into college. Don't let her derail your future. Patricia made a breakthrough in month 3. She'd tracked down 2 of Sarah's exes who'd experienced similar situations. Both men provided written statements about false pregnancy claims, harassment, and civil suits that drained their savings before being dismissed. It's a pattern, Patricia explained. She finds single fathers, creates chaos, then tries to profit from it. But even with evidence of her history, the legal system moved slowly. Month 4 brought the hearing. Dad wore his only suit, the one from my mom's funeral. I sat behind him as Sarah testified, tears streaming down her face as she described being abandoned while pregnant. Her new boyfriend sat in the gallery, rubbing her shoulder. The judge took one look at our evidence, the articles about murderous stepchildren, the harassment documentation, the pattern of behavior, and dismissed her claims. But when Dad asked about recovering his legal fees, the judge shook his head. Each party bears their own costs. $11,000. That's what defending against her lies had cost. I saw Dad's shoulders slump as we left the courthouse. Sarah smirked as she passed us, hand on her still flat belly. The social consequences hit next. Members of Dad's hiking club stopped calling. The few who reached out made it clear they believed Sarah's version, that Dad had forced her to get in termination of pregnancy. He tried explaining once, then gave up. Can't fight everyone, he said, researching hiking groups 2 towns over. My graduation approached with a mix of relief and dread. Dad insisted on hiring security for the ceremony, terrified Sarah might show up. She didn't. I walked across the stage to receive my diploma while Dad cheered from the stands, looking proud but exhausted. Summer passed in preparation for college. Dad helped me pack, double and triple checking that my roommate knew about my allergy. He'd already called campus dining services, the health center, even campus security to register my condition. You don't have to worry so much, I told him as we loaded boxes. Yes, I do, he replied simply. The night before I left, I found him in his office surrounded by papers, bank statements, college tuition bills, the legal fee receipts. My stomach sank as I realized the truth. Our college savings were gone. Every penny spent on lawyers. Dad, it's handled, he said quickly, shuffling papers to hide a pay stub. That's when I saw it. He'd taken a second job, night shifts at a warehouse. He'd been working 2 jobs for months without telling me. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, he repeated, the same simple certainty. I left for college with a knot in my stomach. Dad texted constantly that first month, still anxious about my safety. He'd sent care packages with allergy-safe snacks and new EpiPens. Slowly, his messages became less frantic. By October, he mentioned meeting someone at a book club. Just friends, he clarified quickly, taking things very slowly, running background checks this time. I came home for Thanksgiving to find our house transformed. Security cameras covered every angle. The locks had been replaced with keypad entry. Motion sensor lights blazed when I pulled into the driveway. Bit much? I asked. Bit necessary, Dad countered, but he looked embarrassed. Dinner was subdued. Dad had cooked everything himself, verifying every ingredient with me twice. His new friend from book club had offered to join us, but he'd declined. Too soon, he explained. Maybe Christmas. Christmas did bring a meeting. Catherine, a widow with teenage kids of her own. She and Dad bonded over their caution, their damaged trust. She didn't flinch when Dad explained why he needed to see her driver's license on their first coffee date. I Googled you too, she admitted with a sad smile. These days, you can't be too careful. Spring break of my freshman year, I stopped at our local grocery store for allergy medicine. Turning down the pharmacy aisle, I froze. Sarah stood there, comparing pregnancy tests. Same blonde hair, same perfect makeup, but something was different. She looked tired, older. Our eyes met. My heart hammered, waiting for confrontation. Instead, she simply looked away and walked to another aisle. No bump, no glow. Never pregnant, just like I'd suspected. I told Dad that evening. He sighed, unsurprised. I knew by month 2, he admitted. Her sister called again. Sarah had done the same thing to both exes. Claimed pregnancy, never showed, eventually moved on to the next target. Why didn't you tell me? You were dealing with senior year, college applications. I didn't want her taking up any more space in your head. I thought about all those months of harassment, the legal bills, the social isolation. We could have exposed her, told everyone. Dad shook his head. With what What money for lawyers? Besides, people believe what they want to believe. The hiking club made their choice, so she just gets away with it? She gets to be herself, Dad said quietly. That's punishment enough. I found the restraining order paperwork in his desk drawer while looking for stamps. Completed but never filed. The filing fee listed at the bottom. Another $500 we didn't have after the civil suit. College graduation arrived faster than expected. Dad sat in the audience, graying more at the temples but looking genuinely happy. Catherine sat beside him, their hands not quite touching but close. He'd never stopped working both jobs, ensuring I graduated debt-free. After the ceremony, as we loaded my apartment into a rental truck, I finally asked what I'd wondered for 4 years. Do you regret meeting her? Dad considered while taping a box. I regret what she did to you, the fear she put in your body. But everything else, the money, the fake friends, the gossip, that showed me who really mattered. He gestured between us. We're still here, still standing. That's what counts. The truck loaded, we drove toward my new job in a city 3 hours away. Dad followed in his car, insisting on checking my new apartment for security. Some habits I realized would never fade. The hypervigilance, the food checking, the careful way he approached new relationships. Sarah had left her mark on both of us, but we'd survived her. Not through legal victories or public vindication, but through simple endurance. Two people who'd learned the hard way that sometimes the best response to chaos is just to keep moving forward, one careful step at a time. As we unpacked boxes in my new place, Dad installing extra locks without asking, I thought about the $18,000 he'd spent protecting me, the second job he still worked, the savings he'd sacrificed. He'd never once complained or made me feel guilty. Thank you, I said suddenly, for everything, for choosing me. He paused, drill in hand, looking confused. I didn't choose anything. You're my kid. That's just what you do. And maybe that was the difference between people like Dad and people like Sarah. He gave without keeping score. She took while claiming victimhood. We'd learned which type to watch for now, which type to trust. It was an expensive education, but one that would last a lifetime. The apartment complex in my new city had strict security protocols, which Dad appreciated during his inspection. He tested every window lock twice and made me demonstrate how to use the reinforced deadbolt he'd installed. Catherine waited patiently in the car, understanding his need to ensure my safety before driving back home. My first week at the marketing firm passed in a blur of orientation meetings and new faces. I kept my allergy discreet but informed HR and my immediate supervisor. The company cafeteria manager took it seriously, showing me their ingredient lists and cross-contamination procedures. Normal precautions for a normal life. Exactly what I'd hoped for. Dad called every evening that first month, his voice carrying that familiar undertone of worry. He'd share updates about his day job at the hardware store, carefully avoiding mention of the warehouse shifts I knew he still worked. Catherine appeared in more of his stories, helping him organize the garage, bringing dinner when he worked late, introducing him to her book club friends who didn't know about Sarah. 6 weeks into my new job, my supervisor pulled me aside. There's been someone calling about employment verification for you. They claimed to be from a rental company, but something felt off. We didn't release any information. My blood chilled. I excused myself and called Dad immediately. She found where you work, he said, his voice tight. Don't panic. Just inform building security and document everything. The calls to my workplace escalated over the next 2 weeks. Different voices, different cover stories, but always fishing for information. My schedule, my salary, my address. HR implemented a new verification protocol specifically for me. My coworkers started noticing the special procedures, the extra security measures. I kept my explanations vague, mentioning only a difficult situation with a former family friend. Dad drove up on a Saturday, arriving at dawn after his warehouse shift. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, but insisted on reviewing my apartment security again. We spent the morning installing a doorbell camera he'd bought with his overtime pay. I can pay for it, I offered. Already handled, he said, the familiar refrain. That afternoon, we discovered how she'd found me. My college alumni newsletter had featured a brief announcement about recent graduates' job placements. Just my name, degree, and company, but enough for someone determined to track me down. I'll contact the alumni office, Dad said, adding it to his ever-growing list of security tasks. Get you removed from future publications. He left that evening, but not before slipping an envelope into my kitchen drawer. Inside were $500 in cash and a note. Emergency fund. Don't argue. Love, Dad. The next month brought a new development. My apartment complex manager called to inform me someone had tried to schedule a viewing for the unit next to mine, asking specifically about which units were occupied by young professionals. When they'd pushed for details about current residents, the manager had grown suspicious and refused the showing. I started varying my routines, different routes to work, irregular gym schedules, random grocery shopping times. The constant vigilance exhausted me, but I'd learned from Dad that safety required inconvenience. My coworkers invited me to happy hours and weekend gatherings, but I found myself making excuses. Trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Dad's relationship with Catherine progressed slowly. She understood his hesitation, his need to verify everything twice. Her ex-husband had left her with her own trust issues, different from ours, but enough to make her patient with Dad's cautiousness. When she suggested a weekend trip together, Dad spent 3 weeks planning it, researching the hotel's security and pre-registering at the front desk. I want to do this right, he told me during one of our calls. She deserves someone who's present, not always looking over his shoulder. But he was always looking over his shoulder. I could hear it in the way he paused mid-sentence when his doorbell rang unexpectedly, the way he mentioned casually that he'd switched grocery stores after seeing someone who looked like Sarah in the parking lot. The hypervigilance had become part of him, woven into his daily existence like scar tissue. My company's holiday party arrived with the usual festive atmosphere. I'd made a few work friends by then, people who respected my boundaries without prying. As I chatted with colleagues near the dessert table, someone mentioned opened the elaborate spread of cookies and pastries. Try the almond cookies, someone suggested. They're incredible. I politely declined, mentioning my nut allergy. A newer employee laughed. Come on, a little won't hurt. People are so dramatic about allergies these days. The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah's voice echoed in my memory. You teens are always being overdramatic about allergies. I excused myself, hands shaking as I locked myself in a bathroom stall. The panic attack came in waves, my throat feeling tight even though I hadn't eaten anything. I called Dad from the bathroom, trying to control my breathing. I'm driving up, he said immediately. No, Dad, I'm okay. Just, someone said something that reminded me of her. He stayed on the phone for 20 minutes, talking me through the breathing exercises we'd both learned in therapy. By the time I returned to the party, I'd missed most of it, but I'd survived the trigger. Progress, even if it didn't feel like it. January brought a development we hadn't anticipated. Patricia, our lawyer, called Dad with news. Sarah had been arrested in another state for fraud, this time involving an elderly man she'd convinced to add her to his will while claiming to be pregnant with his grandchild. The case made local news there, complete with her mugshot and a history of her previous schemes. We could send this to everyone who doubted you, I suggested. Dad considered it for a long moment. What would be the point? The people who mattered believed me, the ones who didn't made their choice. But I saw the way his shoulders relaxed slightly, knowing there was now public record of her patterns. He forwarded the article to Catherine, who read it with wide eyes. This is the person who tried to unalive you? She asked me during their next visit. She claimed it was an accident, I said. Building immunity. Catherine's face hardened. That's not an accident. That's attempted unaliving. It was validating to hear someone else say it so bluntly. Dad had been so focused on protecting me, on moving forward, that we'd rarely acknowledged the severity of what Sarah had done. Catherine's outrage felt like permission to be angry. The arrest in another state meant Sarah was occupied elsewhere, at least temporarily. The calls to my workplace stopped. No more attempted apartment viewings. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without checking my locks twice. Dad used the respite to focus on his relationship with Catherine. They took that weekend trip, sending me photos from a hiking trail 2 states away. Dad looked genuinely relaxed in the pictures, his arm around Catherine, mountains in the background. I saved every photo, grateful to see him finding joy again. But old habits persisted. When I visited home for a long weekend, I found Dad had installed even more security measures. The house looked like a fortress. Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks on every entrance. The kitchen remained meticulously free of any nut products, labels checked and double-checked. This seems like a lot, I said gently. It's adequate, he replied, showing me how the new system sent alerts to his phone. Catherine pulled me aside later. He's getting better, she said. You should have seen him 3 months ago. He's actually sleeping through the night now mostly. I thought about the man who used to carry bread for pigeons, whose biggest worry had been making nutritious school lunches. Sarah had stolen that version of him, replaced it with someone who saw danger in every shadow. But Catherine was right. He was healing, slowly. My job performance earned me a small raise after 6 months. I called Dad excitedly, proud to share good news that had nothing to do with Sarah or security measures. He congratulated me warmly, then immediately asked if I'd updated my emergency contacts and verified the direct deposit information was secure. Dad, I said gently, sometimes good things just happen. Not everything is a threat. I know, he said, but we both knew he didn't quite believe it. Spring arrived with unexpected mail at my apartment. The return address was from a law firm in the state where Sarah had been arrested. My hands shook as I opened it, finding a subpoena. They wanted my testimony about Sarah's history of false pregnancy claims and harassment. Dad drove up that night, despite having worked both jobs that day. We sat at my kitchen table, reading through the legal documents together. You don't have to do this, he said. We can fight the subpoena. With what money? I asked, echoing his practical approach to everything. I'll figure it out, he said automatically. But I was tired of running, tired of letting Sarah control our lives from a distance. Maybe testifying will help stop her from doing this to someone else. Dad's face cycled through emotions. Pride at my courage, fear for my safety, exhaustion at the thought of reliving it all. Finally, he nodded. If you're sure, I'll come with you. The prosecutor's office arranged a video deposition to avoid travel costs. Dad sat beside me in the small conference room, his presence steady as I recounted the peanut smoothie incident, the harassment, the false pregnancy claims. The prosecutor asked detailed questions about dates, documentation, the civil suit. Dad had brought copies of everything, organized chronologically in a binder he'd assembled. Has this experience affected your daily life? The prosecutor asked near the end. I thought about the security cameras, the varied routines, the trust issues, the panic attack at the holiday party. Every day, I said simply. 2 months later, we learned Sarah had pled guilty to avoid trial. She received 5 years probation and was ordered to pay restitution to her victims. Not jail time, but at least acknowledgement of her crimes. The elderly man's family sent Dad a thank you letter, saying our documentation had been crucial to their case. We helped stop her, I said, reading the letter. For now, Dad replied, ever pragmatic. People like her don't usually change. Catherine convinced Dad to celebrate the legal victory with dinner at a nice restaurant. He agreed reluctantly, still uncomfortable with public celebrations, but I watched him across the table, holding Catherine's hand openly, laughing at her stories about her book club's latest selection. Progress happened in small moments. My 1-year work anniversary approached with a mix of pride and reflection. I'd built a life in my new city, carefully, cautiously, but genuinely mine. My apartment felt like home, even with its extra locks and security cameras. I'd made friends who knew my boundaries and respected them. The hypervigilance remained, might always remain, but it no longer consumed every moment. Dad visited for the anniversary weekend, bringing Catherine. They stayed in a hotel, Dad having researched its security protocols extensively. We spent Saturday at a local festival, Dad relaxing enough to try Catherine's funnel cake after verifying the ingredients with the vendor. No nuts, he said, triple-checking the sign. No nuts, Catherine confirmed patiently. That evening, as we walked through the city park, Dad pulled me aside. I've been thinking about selling the house, he said. Too many memories, too much security to maintain. Catherine and I are looking at condos in her neighborhood. The house where I'd grown up, where Mom had lived, where Sarah had tried to poison me. I understood his need to leave it behind. What about all the security equipment? The new owners can keep it or remove it, he said. Their choice. It was the first time I'd heard him suggest letting go of a safety measure. Catherine's influence, perhaps, or just time doing its work. The condo search revealed how much the experience had cost Dad financially. The price range he showed me was modest, far below what our old house was worth. I knew where the difference had gone. Legal fees, security systems, lost wages from leaving work for emergencies. I can help with the down payment, I offered. Absolutely not, he said. You save your money, build your future. But I'd learned stubbornness from him. I quietly opened a savings account, depositing part of each paycheck. He'd sacrificed enough. Summer brought news through the legal grapevine. Sarah had violated her probation by contacting another victim, sending threatening messages from a fake social media account. The prosecutor's office called to inform us she'd been arrested again, this time facing actual jail time. It's really over, I said to Dad. Maybe, he allowed. We'll see. The sentencing happened in August. 18 months in minimum security prison, followed by extended probation with mandatory psychiatric treatment. Not enough for attempted unaliving, but something. The prosecutor sent us the sentencing documents, which Dad filed in his ever-present folder of evidence. Catherine suggested we mark the occasion somehow, not celebrating someone's imprisonment, but acknowledging our survival. We met at a quiet restaurant, just the three of us, sharing a meal without checking ingredients beyond my standard allergy precautions. Normal vigilance, not hypervigilance. To moving forward, Catherine toasted with her water glass. To still standing, Dad added, referencing our conversation from months ago. As summer turned to fall, I noticed changes in our phone calls. Dad mentioned the pigeons at his new condo complex, how he'd started carrying bread again on his walks. He talked about Catherine's grandchildren visiting, how he'd taught them to make sandwiches from scratch. The security remained. He'd never fully lose that vigilance. But life had grown around it. My second holiday party at work approached with less anxiety than the first. When someone offered me homemade cookies, I politely checked the ingredients without shame. A colleague who'd overheard asked about my allergy, and I gave a simple explanation without mentioning Sarah, just a person with a medical condition taking normal precautions. Dad and Catherine announced their engagement during Thanksgiving dinner. Small ceremony planned, just immediate family and close friends. Dad showed me the ring, modest but genuine, purchased with cash to avoid any financial entanglements. I had it appraised and verified, he admitted sheepishly. Old habits. Smart habits, Catherine corrected, kissing his cheek. They'd found each other in the aftermath of trauma, built trust on a foundation of shared caution. It wasn't the romance of movies, but it was real and careful and theirs. As I helped wash dishes, Dad mentioned he'd been offered a promotion to manage the hardware store. More responsibility, but better hours, allowing him to finally quit the warehouse job. 2.5 years of double shifts ending at last.